folks, welcome to eCommerce 360. Today we have Ryan, who is the co-owner of Sullen Clothing, one of the world's top tattoo-inspired, art-driven lifestyle brand. Hey Ryan, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
So Ryan, I just watched your backstory. It is super cool, from a tattooer to a tattoo collector to becoming an entrepreneur. Tell us a bit about how that happened.
Okay, well, my background in tattooing started when I was very young. I started drawing tattoos on friends when I was probably somewhere around 14 years old. And we used to play beach volleyball a lot. That was a thing back then. And in between games, I would just take a Sharpie and draw tattoos on people. And then as people progressed into their like later teens and they were able to get tattooed legally, they were coming to me for designs. And so I started designing tattoos for friends, and that one of the designs ended up catching the eye of the artist, and he said, hey, whoever did this art, he should make tattoo designs. And so I immediately took the opportunity to go to that shop, and I said, listen, I don't want to make tattoo designs, I want to make tattoos. And so he said, all right, the owner's not here right now, but the next time he comes by, I'll let him know that you're interested in an apprenticeship. So I called every day for probably 3 months, and the guy was probably so sick of hearing from me, but I was so determined that finally he said, hey, look, he's going to be here on a Thursday. Show up with your portfolio. It was super informal. I show him my art portfolio. He's like, all right, start tomorrow. I go there. Nobody even knows that I'm supposed to be there. I start, and then a tattoo apprenticeship 20 years ago isn't what it's like now. Some of the work is the same, but it was a lot more old school back then. It was a lot more biker driven. So a lot of the things that they had you do were more to kind of bring you down and then build you back up. But it was that experience from apprenticing to then becoming a tattoo artist. I got hit by a drunk driver when I was 16, which really kind of messed with my back. And after about 3 years of tattooing, I knew that that's not something that I could do for the rest of my life, because those back injuries were slowly creeping into my work life. And so I decided to go. I was always going to college, but I decided to focus on design and looking outside of tattooing for where I wanted to go next. And I ended up going to a design school called Art Center in Pasadena, which kind of prepped me for the professional side of art. It's an incredibly difficult program. You're pretty much running full speed the whole time, but it teaches you to have a killer work ethic. It teaches you to bring a high quality of art. It brings you around a lot of like super motivated, just incredibly inspirational artists. Most of my friends that I went to school with are all super accomplished right now, which is pretty cool to say. And then while I was there, I was, saying to myself, the only way you're ever going to really make money as an artist, if you make it on your own, like you're the only person that's going to pay you your worth. And so my options were pretty limited at the time, but I grew up surrounded by surf and skate culture and brands, and I'd seen brands come up in our area that ended up being quite successful. And so we kind of took that same model early on in the early 2000s to like create a brand that was based around iconography, which is kind of like the way surf brands exist today, like where it's basically the repetition of a logo. And so we started that way, where it was very icon driven, very brand driven. And we were trying to focus on things that we knew, which was like surf, skate, snow, moto. The line always kind of had a twinge of tattoo, because that was my background. But it wasn't really until about 5 years in when we realized that, tattooing as like a lifestyle could define the brand. And we were already kind of there, but our first tattoo convention that we went to, we just like stopped and we were like, look, this is a room filled with people that are just like us. And I said, let's just make this the brand. Like, let's, instead of sponsoring moto guys and BMX guys and all these other things that we were used to seeing how brands were successful and how they got attention, we just said, let's not do that. And let's just focus on what my background was and see if we can make a go of it. So, and I think that most like people that preach success in business is they say to make things very specialized, find a niche
Yeah.
and cater to it. And so, we were doing that before we even realized that that was the thing to do, and so it was that decision to pivot and then to make the brand. And it also makes the vision very clear. If you define your audience, then every decision that you make, if you think about that audience, becomes pretty easy to make. So every decision from that point on, we've made like to support tattooing or somehow it needs to make sense for that audience for us to even do it.
So it's a fascinating story because you had no prior experience running a business or or figure out branding or SEO, customer acquisition, and you just kicked off. So tell us a bit about how did you actually build a brand? You've been talking about how you kickstarted the idea, but the logistics and the practical challenges you might have had, right? Building a brand. Give us a bit of insight into that.
Well, brands, like you go through these phases of success as far as like your distribution and all that. I think the early stages, it was like brand recognition. And back before when we started, there was really no like social media or anything like that. So our first stage of branding was basically at like 11 p.m. We would go out, we would have thousands of stickers and we would just plaster them everywhere. We would spend 3 hours a night and we would hit every freeway entrance, freeway exit, everywhere where we knew people would congregate. We would just plaster stickers everywhere. I think the first year we did something like $11,000 in stickers. I mean, it was obscene, but like
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm in line at Starbucks and some guy sees the sticker on my car and he's like, what is that on your car? Is that a band? Like, I see that sticker everywhere. And, we knew that that was kind of, and I mean, there were brands that kind of like Obey, Shepard Fairey was kind of the pioneer of making that something that people recognized as far as like the repetitious imagery, and then there was a brand called Black Flies, which is like a early, really popular sunglass company who was from the area that we were from. And so we saw that that was their kind of MO, and they started in like I want to say like the early 90s or somewhere around there. And so that early brand recognition was through stickers. And then as we were able to like gain access to retail, that was a big one. And then when we started hitting online, it was really just leaning on our artists and our artist network and building our brand through their followers and fans and whatnot. So it was kind of, and again, like all these things go back to, does it make sense for the brand? And one of the early things that we recognized as far as brand building, which allowed us to be international, was me being a tattooer, understanding that tattooers sell stuff when they're on the road. So if they go to London or if they go to Taiwan or Japan or any of these places, like the people from those countries, like are the things that the artists bring to those countries is like gold. So if they can get a shirt that's from California and they're in, Ireland or something, they're able to sell those shirts for a fortune. And so, but making products is expensive. And so we would leverage our ability to produce product with their need for it. So we would trade the rights to use their art and we would then give them product for free. So it allowed our brand to become more visible internationally. B, it gave the artists, something that they could sell without having any of their money taken out of it. And then it also attached us to that artist. So whatever positive feeling people had with that artist, and they also attached it to us. And when you scale that, it allows for you to become global.
Absolutely. So I was just checking out your Facebook community, Insta community, which is called Sullen Family. I mean, it's brimming with this creativity and passion for tattooing. I'm sure most of your acquisition and leads come in through these communities. So how do you nurture these communities, and whose idea is it to actually, build these communities across these social media channels? I know you said when you started off, you really didn't have social media channels for distribution or for any sort of brand awareness. But how and when did you start building these communities on Facebook and Insta, which are, by the way, which are fantastic, which are like brimming with so much of enthusiasm? How did you get started on that?
Well, our community started before Facebook. So like when we started with no money. So when you start with no money, everything becomes creative. So there's no, it's all about sweat equity, right? So like when we started, we would host parties. And so we would partner with these like promoters, and we would get our logo on their flyers and whatnot. And in exchange, we were able to get all of our friends and followers into these events for free, usually before the entrance started. So that way they were able to feel special. And we didn't make any money from it. But like at the height of when we were going out, we would have guest lists of like 1,500 people. It literally took us 2 days to write all the names down. And the promoters were stoked because all of a sudden their events had like 400 people, pre, entrance, that made the events like go off. And so like, and that's all about community. So like we started making community a focus very, very early on. So when social media came around, we just kind of like moved a little bit of that over, and then we just kept the same focus. So like as our guy, because like, being around 20 years, your original guy kind of ages out of the brand. So like you have to kind of find new ways to bring youth. And so we just kind of took that same, you know, mantra. Our mantra is together we rise. So we just kind of built that into it to where, we like featuring normal people. We like featuring artists that people have never heard of. We like featuring our friends. It's always about how can we build up the people around us, because we have this platform. So it's like nothing gives us more joy than finding an artist that has, 5,000 followers, and then all of a sudden we can give them 3 times that amount in like a week, by just giving them the platform and giving them the eyeballs. Because a lot of times now people come to us for, the influencing of tattoo culture, because we live and breathe. It's like so in our DNA that you can't fake it. And so like, we know what good tattooing is, and we know what good future tattooing is. And so people come to us for that trust. I get people all the time asking me for references for tattoo artists. Who should I go to? Where should I go? And the thing is we know the right way to answer that. We know that there's so much nuance with that decision, that it doesn't start with, oh, go with that guy. It starts with, well, where do you, like, what is the image that you want, and where do you want it? Because every artist is different, and I will like 100% pivot half of the artists who only do black and gray, and half of the artists that only do color. And so now you have two camps. Okay, you want a black and gray or a color? And then you say, oh, well, is it big? Then you got, of the color people, there's big ones and there's small ones. And then of that, then there's all these different subgenres. And so we really get it. And I think that that's why our audience is so big, is because they trust us. And not to mention, like, we got really lucky that Instagram is a very visual platform. And we were super early to like adopt to it, and to promote our artists to where we were able to get a fairly large following early on when the app first launched, by taking that same philosophy of like building it up. And we still do it to this day. The program is about the same. We're using user generated content. We're using our own content. We're constantly promoting and looking for new artists. And then we also put like an emphasis on the people who work with us. So like, if you've done something for us, we're going to stoke you out. We're going to try our hardest to make sure that like your business is strong, because you took the faith in working with us. So we're going to give back by trying to make sure that you're always visible.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So, also an overwhelming audience is always rooting for the celebrity artists and celebrities themselves. So, I'm assuming that you must be having a lot of brand loyalty as well as repeat purchase rates. So, what is the secret for you guys to keep your customers hooked to your product and keep coming back and purchasing your merch?
Because our focus for online is investing in our customers that we have. Like some brands are focused on new business where we're focused on old business. So like I'm not as interested in prospecting as I am how can I blow away the customer that's already like given their faith and their trust in buying from us. So like for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. Last year we did a capsule called the Nightmare Collection where we took 5 of our best t-shirts, we made them all black and gray, and we had it in this really cool box. And the box was a fortune. It ended up costing us like over $10 a box. And it was so not profitable as far as like when you're looking at the scale of the things that you do. But the coolness of getting this box to me far outweighed the loss of profit. So it's like I'm investing in that experience, the goosebumps that you get when you get this rad box that like anyone else would say, no, boxes are too expensive. We're not going to add something that's, 10% of our cost and something that they're going to throw away. But I'm like, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to do things that like other people would be afraid to do because it's not smart financially. And to me, the more you do things that your customers don't expect and, ways that you can add value to them, to me, that's how you retain those customers because I think subconsciously they recognize that. They recognize the effort and the time and the thought that goes into all the other little things beyond just the shirt and the design. Because we've got those for days, but it's like, okay, well then what else can you offer that they can see that other brands aren't offering? And to me,
Absolutely.
that's how you retain, you know?
Absolutely. So that's the biggest differentiator, I think. It's the creativity and keep innovating the product and keep listening to your customers. That's amazing. So also I noticed you have like insane content pieces in TikTok, Insta, and Facebook. How do you let these trickle down to your post-purchase workflow, right? So after your customers receive your products, do you customize the notifications? Do you send out, new designs or new merch to them constantly to keep your brand at the top of their mind all the time. So, what is
Yeah,
your?
yeah, yeah. So that's a great question because like it goes back to when we started and we were a traditional mom and pop retail brand. And, obviously that shift over the years changed to where mom and pop retail was absorbed by big box retail. And so now, big box retail dominates most shopping centers to where most brands like ours are direct to consumer or at least half direct to consumer. So we saw that pivot happening and we were lucky to be early adopters to online commerce. Whereas like if you were a brand that started say in the 90s, you were really shunned on if you did direct to consumer because all of your big box retailers would basically shut you down. Whereas like we didn't have a lot of big box retailers to tell us boo. So we were like, we're going direct to consumer. So when we originally went to direct to consumer, the way you typically release products is seasonally. So you do a spring 1, a spring 2, a spring 3, a summer 1, a summer 2, and then you have a fall 1, a fall 2, a fall 3, a holiday 1, holiday 2. And that's kind of like the traditional way that you release product. And so how we pivoted was instead of releasing product on these big bulky deliveries, we started releasing product every week. So we would take that same amount of product and we would chop it up. So now we do, and the other thing is like understanding your brand. Like our brand is about tattooing, our brand is about celebrating people. So we celebrate one artist every Tuesday. So we pick one piece where we're like super pumped on it, and we promote a single piece from a single artist for that week. And so then that artist gets to be singled out and the piece gets to be celebrated. And what's cool is like you always run the risk of over communicating. But my belief is that if you're giving somebody something new and something that's creative and pretty, then they like to see it. They're like excited for what's next. It's like a TV show that has the next week's episode. Like, as long as it's not the same episode as the week before, then you're down to see it, And so, like, for us, that was one of the biggest pivots that we made. It was a conscious decision. It was incredibly difficult to pull off because logistically releasing product every week is a challenge. And so we've done it now for, I want to say we haven't missed a Tuesday in like 2 years. And so now our customers anticipate the Tuesday drops. And so we can see every Tuesday between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. this gigantic lift in sales, because we've trained our customer to know that we're going to have the shirt, we're going to celebrate it. And typically the runs aren't gigantic to where a lot of times if the shirt's super popular, it'll be gone by the end of the day. And so to me, that's like post-purchase, if you're able to earn their trust and them giving you either their email or their phone number. And that's the thing, we only do 3 different messages. We only do the Tuesday message, we only do our big release messaging, and we only do our sale messaging. And so, but trust me, that's a ton. That's a lot. We don't do a ton of sales. We try to keep our inventory manageable to where we're not having to like blow out a ton of product. But the Tuesday releases are the big ones. And then we've also broken up our bigger seasonal releases into smaller seasonal releases, because we're like, people typically only buy about 3 items. So why show them 37? So we'll release probably about 8 shirts at a time. And then that way it allows us to go like every other Thursday, or, we usually don't go more than 2 weeks between a major delivery. So our Tuesday releases are our Tuesday releases where it's 1 shirt. And then our Thursday releases are our bigger capsule releases where it's like spring delivery 1 or spring delivery 2. And the other big change we made is shifting it from being seasonal to just being monthly, because we're selling product now every month. And so we need to like break the construct of like seasonality and really break it into the month and what that month will bring you. So yeah, the designs are brighter and more colorful and typically have, tropical elements and whatnot in June. And in, August or September, the designs start getting almost all black and the artwork's a little bit darker. But the way that we release it stays the same. It's just, maybe there's a few less pieces in May, because May is not typically a huge buying month, and maybe we're going heavier in September, but it's all about the same. And so, and it's understanding that business changes and how to pivot. And if you can, because it's all about a lot of times I say the word ego, and maybe that's not the right word, but people get so stuck in systems and like the way things are supposed to go. Yeah. And we're like blowing that out of the water. We're like, no, what's happening now? What do we need to do to make our customer the happiest, regardless of the way things were done 20 years ago? Let's figure out the way things are done now and how do we maximize that. And so it allows for us to be top of mind all the time. You know what I mean? And we release a lot of product. I mean, for a clothing brand that's our size, I mean, we're probably, I think we do somewhere around 240 different t-shirt designs, and that's not including hats, wovens, sweatshirts, all the other stuff that goes along with it too. So, but yeah, so that's kind of, sorry if that was a little long-winded, but
That's great. So you do a lot of products, right? So I just wanted to understand, is shipping and fulfillment a great challenge for you? Because I suppose it should be, because you keep releasing new products, and then you said by Tuesday it's all out. And so that means more number of orders, more shipping and fulfillment. Do you have all that streamlined? And how do you manage the customer anxiety on shipments and all those logistics side of business?
Well, we have a post-purchase flow for shipping. So we're trying to stay like on top of the customer, allowing them to know like when an order is packaged, when the order is shipping. information on that shipment. We're also doing promotional like banners within those shipping notifications. Our downstairs, we have a warehouse where there's a few brands that utilize it, but they're on point where we're shipping orders like always the day of, regardless of the volume, whether it's like, you know, you know, 100 orders a day or 300 orders a day, we're still able to ship out all of them, timely. And that's important to us because to me, there's like in e-commerce, it's the simplest things that matter the most. It's not how much you spend on Facebook. It's not how many followers you have on Facebook. It's how fast are you shipping out your product? How accurate is the product that you're shipping? How quick are you? How easy do you make it for people to exchange a product that doesn't fit them correctly? To me, those are the simple things that make the biggest impact on the bottom line. And I think that a lot of times brands focus on the wrong things when they should really be focusing on the simple things to make the biggest impact.
Absolutely. So let me talk about the bottom line a little more. What are your North Star metrics that are like, surefire indicators of your growth and your revenue? What are the metrics that you measure constantly, consistently, or if there is only one, or if there is a group of metrics that you measure at Sullen Clothing?
I like to see, how many visitors we get, how many eyeballs are we getting to the site? Also, I want to make sure that we're converting at a high level. I always want to try to keep, I don't know what industry average is, but our average conversion is about 3.8%. So if it dips too far below that, then I kind of try to look at stuff and see if there's something that we're doing wrong. As far as like, because it's easy, like, of course you want to look at what you make in a day. And I follow 3 metrics every day. I follow what's the gross amount, how many orders was it, and what was the average order value, just to kind of see, because sometimes if you're not looking at all of those things, it's not really going to give you a full picture of that. And I try to see that trend year over year, month over month. So I'm never looking like April to May. I'm always looking April to April. And, the tricky thing is with the pandemic, everything kind of got crazy, like in a good way. But then as things calm down, you have to like temper your expectations as far as you're not going to see those same like monster jumps, and you have to be okay with that. As far as like things that I'm looking at, and then I also like, for me, it's like what styles, because we're releasing a product every Tuesday, what styles killed it and why? You know what I mean? What were the elements of that piece that people seem to respond to? Because that helps us build product in the future. Because if there's something that's like, that doesn't hit, then I go, okay, well, maybe we don't need to do, like, for instance, we were doing, like, I'm a big fan of color, but the brand is like traditionally black and gray, standard t-shirts, where I'm more like, I like these nuanced colors and I like doing sophisticated mixes of those colors, but like with this summer, I saw that like those were the shirts that weren't selling as well. So it tells me, okay, well, I need to like step back and I need to start designing more towards what our customer wants and less towards what I want. So, and the only way that you could do that is if you're really looking at granularly how things are doing, and being able to take your ego out of it and say, well, maybe what I like isn't what our customer likes. And so I need to then say, okay, next year I'm going to make less of that. And I'm going to try to make more of what was working.
Absolutely. Always having a pulse on what customers want. So looking back, right, from your experience, would you like to share some of the best decisions that you've made and decisions that didn't go your way, some of the worst, and some of them that, you probably thought, hey, I shouldn't have made that, but then I wish, things have gone the other way and probably I would have decided better. So what are the best and the worst decisions that impacted your brand, or probably, some things that you thought was like not a great decision, but didn't have so much of an impact on your brand? Would you
I
like to share
think I
those?
think the best decision we ever made was to like focus on tattooing and really become, because I mean, mind you, we've been around for 20 years. So
Mhm.
even though it took us a minute to figure it out, we were still like the first like recognizable big tattoo brand. And I think that that roll of the dice had to be the best decision that we ever made. I think also being okay with sharing the spotlight with these artists, because we were the first brand that came out with shirts that didn't even have our logo on it. We were doing. I remember thinking, dude, this is either going to be the biggest failure or it's going to be awesome. One of the first artist T-shirts that we ever did was with an artist named Nico Hurtado, who became incredibly popular as a tattooer. And Nico tattooed my left arm, and because I was broke, I was like, "Hey, let me print some shirts for you." Um, and then I can kind of work that into the deal of the tattoo, because tattoos are expensive. And he was cool. That he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I made these shirts for him, and they look sick. And I was like, "Hey, dude, like, what do you think if we made these shirts? Would you be cool with that?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm totally." And I was thinking to myself, well, it doesn't say Sullen on it, but it's still awesome. Like, it says Nico really big on it. And so we're like, let's just try it. And it ended up doing like incredibly well. We sold it for probably 10 years. And it taught us that like the rules of apparel can be changed. It means that like you could do whatever you want as long as it feels right. And I think that that was like one of the bigger aha moments, because I still think to this day we're one of the few brands that celebrates the artist on the tee. Most brands, like when I was coming up, like it was, you hid who you worked with because you didn't want the competitor to work with them. And we were like, no, man, let's blow these people up. If they end up working with this other brand, then great. Like it's, we might lose a few people, but to me, the benefit of stoking them out and giving them that celebrity is worth the risk. And it paid off handsomely for us, because now these artists saw that we were giving credit to them. They saw the impact that it had, because we had artists all day long, especially in the early days of Instagram, where they were coming up to us being like, dude, you blew me up, man. You put me on the map. You made me a household name. And I just want to say thank you for that. And I was like, man, that is so cool, because it's such a symbiotic thing. You know what I mean? And I think that when things work like that, it ends up being the best, because like when your focus is helping others, and that energy comes back around to you, then it's like game over. And not only do you live a happier life, but you're also able to achieve in business. And to me, that's like a win-win. I think my biggest regrets are, I try to keep a somewhat of a distance, because I think that like, one thing that like people don't want to talk about or don't want to really acknowledge is that not everyone's going to be happy for your success. And so I've had a few people that when we were coming up, that I really admired and put a lot of faith into, kind of turned on me personally or the brand when we started finding success. And I didn't understand that. I had people I had a friend that was in my wedding, and just moved to Idaho and didn't even tell me. And I was just like heartbroken, because I didn't think that people would be resentful of it, like of you finding success, because it's still a grind. It's still hard work. You know what I mean? It's not like we're
Yeah.
having yachts in the freaking harbor. It's like but so I always try to like temper my expectations for everyone, so that way I don't I don't get blindsided with things, because I feel like I always tell people like, you define your emotions, so things that really bother you, it's only bothering you. So if you can take every situation and think about it in a certain way, then nothing can affect you. And so now I try to do that. I try to temper my expectations with everyone I meet. I try to go into every relationship knowing that it can go south. And I try to like be very careful with like things that I celebrate, because I know that not everyone's going to be happy for you. So it's better to just kind of keep those victories to yourself, and cheer those people that are around you and make that your focus. And then that way, you can rest knowing that they're probably, the relationship will probably kind of stay the way that that was. But as far as like, I don't think we've really made any like majorly bad decisions, because everything that we've done as like a business is always try to be positive. We raise a lot of money for people. I think what makes our brand unique is that we're constantly looking for ways to help others, whether it's like through charity art shows or through making shirts for people. Like that's always been a deep part of our DNA, to where when you're constantly trying to do right by people, it's kind of hard to make bad decisions, you know?
I mean, yeah, you're going to be satisfied either way, right? It's not just about revenue, it's about helping people, right? So you're going to have a lot of satisfaction of doing good and adding value to others' lives. If you have it very revenue centric, I think there is a chance that you might get disappointed. But if it's people centric, I think you are bound to be happy. So that brings me to the question that we call it a wrap. So, what are your ambitions for Sullen Clothing, and 20 years? How do you keep the fire on? How do you hustle and how do you grind day in and day out?
I think you have to, like, for us, it's like I'm always looking for the new kid. I'm always looking for, hey, who's the next Nico Hurtado? Who's the next guy
Mhm.
that's hungry, that needs the help? Because now we have this platform. And so for me, for us to stay relevant, we always have to stay on top of what's new and what's next. And so that's kind of what drives us. So like I spend a lot of my time just looking to see what's next, what's new, who's apprenticing where, and what's their work look like, and what are the like styles that, and how are they evolving? Because like when we started, things were very like different, to where like we really saw the whole like the birth of realism in tattooing. That wasn't a
Mhm.
thing, 20 years ago. Like it literally started when we first started, where guys in the high desert in California, like Mike DeVries and Nico Hurtado, they, Mike DeMasi was high on that list, where they were doing tattoos that people didn't think were possible. And like it really changed how tattooing evolved as an industry, and what was possible, to do with the tattoo machine. And I think you're going to see those like renaissance moments happening every, I don't know, 10 or 15 or 20 years, to where people just change the dynamic of what you thought it was. And I think like just trying to see where that stuff is going, because I mean, like even like pattern work, that wasn't really big, but then there was dudes that were killing it. So we try to do stuff with pattern and tattooing. And right now it's all about like, soft, shading with a 3-round liner. And so that's like the big thing. And now people are trying to make pens with the little, so it like acts like a tattoo machine, because that's the thing, is like a tattoo, the way it works is so unique to it, because you're putting all these little dots in the skin, and a brush doesn't do a dot, a pencil doesn't do a dot, and so it's like now it's like all these people are trying to figure out ways, well, how can I make my dry media act like a tattoo machine, which is kind of cool. So I think, the other thing that keeps you on your toes is that it can always end tomorrow. Like there's nothing in fashion that says you have tomorrow guaranteed. And there's always, because I mean, we've had our ebbs and flows and our ups and downs. And so it constantly humbles you to where you have to stay fiery or you get wiped away. I mean, I can't tell you how many brands I've seen that came off strong and then just ended up being, they don't exist anymore, because for various reasons. But I guess the nature of, or the underlying thing between all of them, is that they're all gone, and we're so conscious of that it keeps you on your toes, to where you always have to be bringing newness. You always have to be, because your customer can smell out you being lazy. If you're not bringing something that's unique and creative, you know, like, and we release a shirt, if it doesn't do well, I know it's because maybe I could have put more time into it. So in apparel, you have, you don't have the luxury of not having fire, because if you don't, then you're gone.
That's scary and motivating at the same time, I think. It's like you're always on the survival mode. And are you still hands-on? Like, do you
Every
have
day, every
wow,
day, every
wow.
day. I mean, if I showed you my wall, you would trip out. It's pretty wild. I mean, like the amount of product, like the thing is like the outreach is the biggest part, is the hardest part. And I've been doing it for so long that I kind of have to be that guy, because I know the right way to reach out to an artist. I know the right way to take, because it's like being in sales, you know, not everybody's going to love you. Not everybody's going to respond to you. You know, you're going to have people that ignore you. You're going to have people that are super stoked to hear from you.
Yeah.
And so over time, you learn to build these, like, you know, it's like you just learn to build those skills. And then you also, over time, you have to look for things that you find add newness, you know, and that's not a skill that's easy to teach, you know, so it requires for me to, like, you know, constantly get my hands dirty, you know. I don't do as many of the events, you know, but like as far as like building out the line and building out the product and building out the direction, you know, it's 100% still a day-to-day task. So no days off.
And do you ever want to get a tattoo? I mean, do you have still that passion for getting one, or doing one, or you just done
Yeah,
with
I
that?
still tattoo. I still tattoo. You
Okay.
know, like usually it's like I don't really tattoo for money. I tattoo my
Yeah,
friends. I
for
tattoo
fun.
friends of friends, or fans of the brand. They want the logo
Mhm.
tattooed. I'll do that. As far as getting tattooed, I'm not opposed. It's really trying to find the time, you know, to like dedicate to doing that, because it is very time consuming. There are pieces that I want to get, but they're very big, so I'm kind of putting them off, because you know it's a commitment from the artist and from the collector. So you know, so I haven't really. I think the last time I was tattooed was probably 4 or 5 years ago. You know, but I definitely want to get more. You know, it's just also I'm very I'm non-committal. So it's like it took me so long to figure out what I wanted to do with my left arm, you know, because I was a tattoo artist and I had visible tattoos, but my left arm was completely blank, because I knew that I wanted it to be a full sleeve. Just I wanted one big piece, and I wanted it to be a certain way. And I knew that it would take the time of finding the right person to do it, and I did. I waited. I was able to get Nico to do it, so I'm actually super pumped that I was able to like fend everybody off. It's like, well, where's your left sleeve tattoo? And I'm like, well, it's coming. But I just, waiting for the right time. So I think I was about 29 when I eventually started it. And then, I'm glad, because if I would have got tattooed when I was 19 on my arm, it would have looked like that I would have regretted it. Because what was cool in the late or early 90s was not cool, in the mid 2000s. So, and that style hadn't been created yet. So, and I think that, I always like say to people, like, do you, and do what's right, what feels right. Like, don't succumb to the peer pressure of things. Like I always like encourage people not to get tattooed that aren't into it. I'm like, it's not for everybody. For those people that it is, go for it. Hog wild, awesome. If it's not, that's cool too. Like I'm for both sides. Like whether you have them or whether you don't, I think you should celebrate that.
Amazing. Amazing. So, do you have any piece of advice for the new emerging e-commerce stores?
I think uh, focus on your customer first. Like figure out ways to add value always. Don't focus on business that you don't have, because to me, the best advice I can give to anyone that's in e-commerce is your best salesperson is your customer. Like no Facebook ad is going to convert someone better than a friend will. Because if your buddy buys a shirt and he's like, dude, this thing is amazing, it fits good, the print is on point, look at this art, and his buddy's like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like the odds of him going and buying something are 1,000 times greater than you showing an ad with a cool lifestyle image of a guy with tattoos and you see the shirt, And so I think that, like, to me, that's like the nexus, like what the DNA of our brand is, building our business through the customers that we already have, and hoping that they will be our marketers, through the experience that we provide.
Amazing. Very, very inspiring. Thanks for that, Ryan. Thanks for coming on our show. I think our listeners have a lot of insights to glean from about the passion that you have, the kind of value that you add for your customers as well as artists who come on board, and how you have to build a business around adding value to other people rather than just revenues and numbers and figures. So it was super inspiring and extremely motivating to see you guys grind in 20 years. So thanks, Ryan, for coming on our show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.